four bills today. We're dealing with Senate Bill 140, 196, 282, 141. So we're going to open up the exec session on Senate Bill 140, an act relative to credit for alternative extended learning and work-based programs. I'd like to call on Representative Lino for a motion.
I'd like to move to pass on Senate Bill 140.
Representative Lino moves it. Representative Ellison seconds the motion. Representative Lino, would you like to speak to the
I'd be
motion?
delighted to. Thanks very much. Senate Bill 140. Actually, I think based on what my understanding really clarifies, I think what the legislative intent was behind Senate Bill 435 from the past session, and basically make sure that it's very clear that each local school board shall determine whether to grant academic credit for alternative extended learning and work-based programs. And that's what 140 does, and I believe it incorporates an amendment from Senator Starr when it was in the Senate that specifies that. So I hope you'll support the committee.
Representative Ellison, do you have any comments on this? None. Okay. The floor is open. I will also say that in the Senate, this was ought to pass by a voice vote of the Senate and a 5-0 vote out of House Education Committee, House Senate Education Committee. The floor is now open for discussion on Senate Bill 140. Representative Cordell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not going to vote for not to pass recommendation on this. I think the intent that I voted for with SB 435 is being carried out in the Learning Everywhere program. And I would like to pass out some information that I requested from the department. And these are letters of support that the department received from various groups earlier in the year, primarily in the January-February timeframe. And I would draw your attention to a number of them. There is the New Hampshire Academy of Science, the Aviation Museum, the Boys and Girls Clubs. There are Boys and Girls Clubs in various locations. For them to have to go to every school district in which one of their boys or girls participating in their programs go to each and every school district to get an extended learning opportunity credit approved is a huge burden to them, rather than going through an application process to a what is now in the current rules that have been provided to the State Board of Education proposed a review commission and then to the State Board for approval. I'd also like to point out First New Hampshire, which we all know for the First Robotics program. Heritage Academy, which is run by Heritage Plumbing and Heating Company. Jump Start, which does personal finance learning. We talked about personal finance learning in relation to a college savings account program that, as its basis, required personal finance information. L&A Health Careers, who does training for students interested in nursing. The McAuliffe Shepherd Discovery Center, who has many programs for students from across the state. It would be a huge burden for them to go to every school district in which one of the students coming to them to get an extended learning opportunity. In there, they also mentioned the Mount Washington Observatory, and I've been there recently for a program, and they talked about the programs that they offer to students, very much geared toward weather and related fields. But again, how can they go to every school district to get an extended learning opportunity? And then finally, the same applies to Outward Bound, who many of us are familiar with. So I think that these letters of support illustrate the need for this program, and I think would be harmed by passing SB 140, which would eliminate the centralized approval of credits for very valid and important learning opportunities that are being offered around the state outside the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Elliott, Representative Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there's a controversy here before I vote, because it's my understanding, at least in Salem, where my 17-year-old twins are both 8 students, that they're already on this program in the Salem district. Now, I need to know before I vote whether or not it is already in effect in local school boards throughout the state of New Hampshire or not, and I need your ruling on that, Mr. Chairman.
My understanding is, thank you for the query. My understanding, according to a survey that was done by the Department of Education, that of the 81 high schools, that 62 have some form of what we call extended learning opportunities, ELOs, currently in place. ELOs are also currently in state statute. So those, that, you're right, there is a concern about how the ELO program and the extended learning opportunities do coexist. But to answer your question, there are about 7,000 students across the state who are currently involved in current extended learning opportunities which your grandchildren would be involved in.
So why do we need this bill?
That's one of the questions before the committee on this bill. Representative Bowman.
Thank you. Proposal alternative also relaxed. And this is why some students take courses that maybe their school, and I all agree with local control, but when somebody takes a credit from another school, an accredited school, a public school in New Hampshire, and the local school board can say, no, we're not going to allow that relaxed credit, that's going to happen.
Thank you. Other comments? Representative Doherty, Representative Luno, Representative Cordell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clarification, I was on the Pembroke School Board for 6 years. I am an advocate of local control. I do think it's important that school boards make decisions on credits for students within their districts and have that sole authority. I'm not against students achieving credit outside of the normal channel of schooling. But I do think that the local school board needs to approve, or in some cases perhaps even disapprove of a credit, depending on where it's coming from and what it represents. I feel strongly that school boards need to have control over the credits that are used for graduation for students in their district. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Luno, Representative Cordell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything Representative Doherty just said, and actually to a great extent, I agree with what Representative Cordelli has said as well. You know, in terms of organizations like this not having to chase down every school district in order to set up extended learning opportunities for our students across the Granite State. And Senate Bill 140 doesn't do anything to interfere with the department's ability to go out and coordinate the extended learning opportunities or the Learn Everywhere opportunities with any of these organizations that put letters forward, whether it's First Robotics or the Aviation Museum or the McAuliffe Center or the Boys and Girls Club. They can absolutely help to coordinate and make those opportunities available for all of our students across the Granite State and provide an opportunity for these students to earn graduation credit that is subject to the graduation requirements and standards set forth by the local school boards. So Senate Bill 140 doesn't do anything to interfere with what I think is a tremendous opportunity for the department to finally lend a hand and get behind supporting students in the Granite State to receive high-quality extended learning opportunities.
Representative Cordell, Representative Lakers.
Thank you. 2 points, if I might, Mr. Chairman. One, in relation to Representative Elliott's comments and questions. Local districts may approve credits under the Extended Learning Opportunity Program. This that we're talking about in SB 140 is an extension of that program to allow for centralized approval of those credits, especially for organizations that are broader than just one district based. And I point out also that in the latest rules that have been submitted to the State Board for approval, there is a program approval committee established that includes someone from the Office of Academic and Professional Learning, OAPL, a department representative from that content area, and additional members, one of whom shall be from the ELO network, and not less than one licensed educator from the districts licensed in that content area. So there is plenty of review about the programs that would be approved for this. That approval process has been broadened under the rules proposed to the State Board. And I think that we've talked about, and Representative Luno has acknowledged, and so I take it he'll be voting against this.
I made the motion to pass it, so I will be voting against.
Let's don't put words in other people's mouths.
Okay, I'm sorry. That there are organizations, there are programs that would be impacted in their ability to provide learning opportunities to students across district lines. And I think that, if we care about the learning of students, schooling is changing. We've got online courses, we've got learning opportunities that are being offered in various places. During a recent presidential campaign, I toured with a candidate manufacturing company near the airport that had a summer boot camp for high school students to teach them about advanced manufacturing. So learning takes different forms, different shapes, different places, and I think we need to recognize that and defeat this legislation.
Thank you. Representative Lakers, Representative Woodcock.
Yeah, my concern is for the students themselves, because they can't help it if their parents move from district to district, and if they've taken a course, say in 9th grade, that another district will not credit until 10th grade, then they have to take it again, because they don't have credit for it. If they take a VLAX course in a district that credits it, then they get to the other district, they have to take the same topic again. And think of yourself, high school student, you've done all this work, now you have other classes you want to take, and now you're forced to take this class again because the district your parents moved to don't accept the credit that you earned already, and that to me just, and I remember being a high school kid and having to take a class a second time because of ridiculous rules, which I think got changed, and I remember how frustrating it was, and it's like, I could be taking another class during this time, and instead I'm sitting here in a class that I've already taken. So I don't want to do that to kids, and I see this and it does happen. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Representative Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments, if I may. Learn Everywhere, extended learning, learn opportunities, experiential learning, all of those are substance of the current education system across our state. And they provide a unique opportunity for youngsters. I mean, our 4-year model now is by itself maybe in question as we move down the line. That being said, the course of study that's presented to local school boards is very difficult for school administrations and principals and curriculum directors to get together and be passed every single course. The graduation requirements is not something that's taken willy-nilly. To move a class into the course of study is a very difficult piece of project, which allows local control. It allows learn everywhere, extended learning pieces. So it's already there for the most part. And as I just quickly look through the information that Representative Cordelli just gave us briefly, I didn't want to read through while he was talking. I only found one item that spoke specifically to centralizing credit at the state. I have one right in front of me is requesting more local control. But all of them, as Glenn presented, supports extended learning, learn opportunities. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if we go back and put local control out of business, here, there, and everywhere, in the course of study, the graduation plan for youngsters is going to be abridged and very difficult. Thank you.
Representative Cordell. Representative Cornell.
Yeah.
I know. I just want to say, I will be voting for 140. When I voted last year for Senate Bill 435, I was under the impression that all credit would be awarded by local school districts and that they would not have to accept credits that somebody else had said it was okay. And in my mind, the thought of somebody getting all of their credits without having to step foot in a high school, and then that high school having to award them a graduation certificate is wrong. So I will be voting for 140.
I have a
Thank you.
question for,
Representative Luna.
yeah, so a question for you, Representative Cornell. Does Senate Bill 140 go to, and I guess going back to Senate Bill 435, does that go towards school districts accepting or not accepting credits from other public schools, or is it this directed such as, you know, of what Representative Lakis was talking about, what you were talking about, or is this really directed towards extended learning opportunities? Maybe I can clarify my question. Let me just withdraw the question.
Thank you, Representative Lewis. Other comments, Representative Black.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Going back to statute, where we have written in statute that education, instruction, and curriculum are a shared responsibility between local and state. That's in statute. We've been talking here about local control and of extended learning activities and that learning period. I think we have a problem in the state that we are not thinking beyond what we've thought for the last umpteen years in the state. That's all going to be done within the confines of that school, or what the confines of that school agree that we're going to have as an alternative program by way of your principal or your teacher within the building, which can be outside the school. But it concerns me that, and I think we have a problem which we have to dig down a little deeper on, that we do have some public schools in this state that are accredited organizations, where a student takes a course through them, then transfers to another school, and the receiving school won't accept the credit, i.e. VLAX. VLAX is a public school in this state. And if I take a course in mathematics saying, well, I'm going to learn according to where I am in my proficiency level, and or if I'm excelling myself and I want to take an Algebra 2 class as a freshman, I can do that because it's all based upon proficiency now. It's not based upon seat time or where you're taking that seat. We have to look above and beyond. And I cannot understand why some school districts have the right to say, we're not going to accept that VLAX credit. That is, it's a accredited institution. It's approved by the State Board of Education. It is a public school in our state. So that's, I think we need to look more in that direction. We're a changing society right now where we're engaging our young people in work workforce issues and experiences much earlier than we have in the past. And if the state can help us out in defining some of those programs and offerings and ensure that it is a credit towards graduation, I'm all for it. And I think the way the bill was presented initially by Senator Khan dealt with the State Board of Education has since been modified, so it's all local control through our school boards now. I think that's not being broad-minded. I don't think it's looking to the future either. This is another move forward to try and help us motivate students, to better prepare them, to make them aware of what's in their own community around them, and to engage that community as part of our educational programming. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ellison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's an association of ELO coordinators in the state, and they put out 37 pages, 1,000 sites where students are getting ELO opportunities, and they range from Berlin to Salem and back and forth, and they range from pizza parlors to the Attorney General's office and so on. I would guess that the 7,000 students that you mentioned probably are pretty happy with their experience under the current ELO system, regardless of what high school they're functioning.
Thank you. Any further comments? Representative Luna.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So maybe this will help sort of, I guess triage a bit the difference between VLACs and other accredited public schools that have academic credit granting authority, and what this bill's talking about right here. So my understanding from Representative Ladd is that VLACs actually has credit granting authority. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can grant academic credit.
Yes.
Yes. So, and also my understanding, and this I think goes from similar experience to Representative Doherty of years on a public school board, that extended that alternative extended learning and work-based programs, such as the ones that are suggested here, Big Picture Learning, Aviation Museum, Boys and Girls Club, BAE, Franco-American, First Robotics, Heritage Training, do not have credit granting authority. However, it is up to the local school board as to whether or not a learning experience, alternative learning, I'll use the words here, alternative extended learning, work-based program, under any of these would be sufficient for the local school district to grant credit. Local school boards, local school districts have that under their control right now. So basically, I see the Learn Everywhere program as as an opportunity for the department to help school districts coordinate these alternative work-based and extended learning opportunities. But Senate Bill 140, consistent with how we do academic credit granting in the state, leaves that up to the local school districts to grant such credit. So I don't see this as really a VLACs or public school credit thing.
Thank you. Representative Tanner, Representative Doherty, Representative Bohm, and Representative Lakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As someone who, way back when ELOs weren't even popular, but senior projects were starting to come in, and students were asking if they could substitute outside learning for certain credits inside our school building. I was involved in a couple of those, and there, at least at that time, and I assume even today, that if a school is going to give credit, there's an educator within that school district who oversees the project and makes sure that different benchmarks are being met. The state sets standards for different curriculum, and the local school board and the teachers and the schools actually set the individual curriculum, how to meet those standards. At the end of the experience, the student came back to the school, and in cases of like senior projects, has a night where they give presentations to actually indicate what they have done and how they have met these benchmarks that were set. We even actually had to set rubrics for extended learning opportunities. I am under the impression that the state Department of Education has dwindled down on the content area supervision by specialists. And that we know that the Department of Education is already overwrought with all the different things that they have to do. I can't imagine, first of all, them actually taking the same responsibility that teachers do at schools where ELOs are actually occurring in senior projects and school-to-work projects. And how can they actually oversee these individual students and give them the opportunity to come in and talk about their experience, what's going on, somebody that's checking in to make sure that whatever's happening at that building or that Boys and Girls Club is actually happening. This Learn Everywhere, without having the local school district control, takes the educator out of the whole system. And for that reason, I think the control on these extended learning opportunities for credit should occur at the local school district. Now, if the student wants to take Outward Bound, and a lot of them have, and a lot of them have gone to Boys and Girls Clubs for years and years and years and have wonderful experiences. Parents take their kids to museums and have wonderful experiences. They don't necessarily get credit at the local school district for that because it's not within an educational curriculum. And that's why I think the oversight needs to stay locally.
Thank you. Representative Doherty, Bohm, and Lakers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just a short statement. I have admittedly limited experience, but my experience as a high school counselor, and this was well before a lot of this ELOs came into existence, but we did deal with VLATs. But I never remember a case where my school denied credit to a student transferring in. And we had pretty high transient population. If another school or school district granted credit to that student, we recognized it as credit. We never said you can't have it. If you earned it, it's yours. And I can't remember a case that came to the school board when I was on there of a parent or student questioning that a credit was not granted by the local district for a student transferring in. I may be somewhat naive in this, but I just have no personal experience with that in my career. Thank you.
Thank you. Bohm, Lakers, and Shaw.
Thank you. And I was on the school board also when Relax was coming out, and I remember the vote on our school board was not unanimous to accept Relax. And one of the arguments, well, a lot of old students can learn that way. But the point was, the word alternative, Relax as an alternative. Also, the nice behaviors, as Bill said, that was, if it was a state accredited course credit, then I wouldn't have a problem, but alternative is Relax. And I've even had a problem in our school board when it was proposed that those students in the 8th grade taking the high school algebra course, which then maybe in their 9th grade they could take geometry, whether or not to give credit, high school credit for that 8th grade course, even though it was identical cost. I mean, and that was contentious in our school board, giving credit for a high school course taken in the 8th grade, which we eventually did because it was the exact same course. So there is some problem with school boards and school districts accepting credit from other schools, including their own in some cases.
Thank you. Representative Lakers, Shaw, Cordell.
I was just thinking the comment made about a kid never stepping foot in your school and getting credit, and I was thinking of like my granddaughter who moved just before the end of her senior year and graduated from this high school that she didn't go to, and just wondering how, it happens, so what's the difference, I guess, is my question.
Thank you. Representative Shaw, then Cordell.
Yes. Section B that's being eliminated repealed and reenacted by this bill states that the State Board of Education shall adopt rules, not DOE. And it says that relative to the approval of alternative programs for granting credit, it says shall adopt rules. By taking that out, you're putting everything in control of the local district, which means there are going, if we have, what, 67, 90, whatever districts in our state, you're going to have 90 sets of policies regarding that. I would be more comfortable if we left B in and then had a section that, like C, that says that each local school board shall, maybe you could even leave this, shall have the final determination or something. So you still have rules being adopted by the state, which would cover what Representative Cordelli and others have said about, you know, having a broad, like say Civil Air Patrol. They go to the state board could say, yes, this is a good thing for the state, but your local district will still have to approve it, but it's been already approved by the state. So if you had both of those things together, it would make more sense, but eliminating rules at the State Board of Education, to me, creates a more serious issue like what Representative Lakes was talking about regarding acceptance for these kids. And there are already school districts that have policies on certain things that create immense problems for students. And they'll say, well, you know, it says in law that such and such can be done. And they say, yeah, but we have our own policy. And so it doesn't apply to us here in Canada or here in wherever. So I think it's a dangerous change in regards to kids. I understand local control, and I think it's important. But I think it's a dangerous change to eliminate B, but rather we should add something to B, or make C, and then add some language that gives the local school board like the final decision. But I think it would be different, eliminating the State Board of Education from everything.
Thank you, Representative Cordell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to expand on an earlier comment that I made about the Learn Everywhere Program Approval Committee that is in the proposed rules. And that does include a representative from the ELO network as well as a local administrator from that content area to come up with a recommendation. On an ongoing basis, then, the Office of Academic and Professional Learning, OAPL, will be responsible for monitoring that program. If at any point, based on a site visit or other reason, they see that the program is not being implemented as intended, they can recommend to the state board to remove approval of that program. So that I think that there are local content area people involved. There is monitoring on an ongoing basis. And I think it's a very valuable program that would be eliminated by SB 140.
Thank you. Representative Cordelli, Representative Shaw.
Cordelli.
Excuse me. Woodcock, thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one point. One of the things that I think we're also losing in this, and way back in Stone Age when I was a principal, it was called independent learning. But the reality of the one issue here is that often classes that are taken somewhere else do not align with the high school requirements. And that makes it very difficult for a youngster coming in that doesn't have. The school has gone through the school board primarily, established the criteria on and over and above what the state says they have to have for graduate requirements. If a youngster takes a course at any of these external programs, which I support 100%, I think they're critical to youngsters' education. they have to be previously approved by the school board, so they fit in his curriculum or her curriculum, so they don't lose the credit. I mean, that's a critical piece of oversight you're losing when you have a centralized authority saying, yes, we're gonna approve all these things. It may not even fit into the graduation requirements, and it's just a double waste aside from the learning piece. I think we can't lose track of that, but that's critical. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative
I
Shaw.
just had a question, in the notes, did we have any testimony for or against with School Boards Association or Association of Principals? I didn't have anything down. Okay.
The school board is
Yes,
I have notes that both the School Board Association and the School Administrators Association were in favor of it. If I'm wrong, I hope
that reflects my notes.
That's what's in the notes, is that the School Boards Association, Nicole Heinlein, supports the bill.
Jerry Cruz.
And Jerry Cruz supports it.
Representative Lakers, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just had a question that I wrote in my notes while we're looking at notes. And I haven't gotten an answer. Is there a method for students to contest the decision of the school board?
Of the local school board?
Yes.
I don't have an answer to that question. Representative Bland.
I believe you can appeal to the State Board of Education.
Usually you can.
But may I go further?
Yes.
I think that we're discussing several issues here. And outside of school learning is primarily what we're looking at. But we've also drifted into the area of accepting credit given somewhere else, like i.e. through VLAX or through other accrediting institutions, maybe the public schools. I experienced that with my own son years ago when he took U.S. history in the 9th grade in an accredited school. He moved to another community and they offered U.S. history in the 10th grade and they wouldn't give him the credit for that. He knew his U.S. history upside down and went out to major in college. So I think we do have some issues here which we need to get a handle on here. If it's a public school within our state, and they've received credit for that, and with this declining demographics we have in our state, it's critical for many schools to fill these classes up. They don't have the population to begin with, and if you're down to 10 kids, 9 kids, and you don't have a lot of staff in your school, in other words, to get off the path which you have established where the order the courses come from, there's not much alternative available, so the kid goes into U.S. history again. I think that's wrong. But I also feel outside of learning activities don't necessarily need an instructor with certification. That's an old-fashioned way of looking at it, and we dealt with that in looking at our instructors at the CPE programs as being maybe that Napa Care person that's got all the technical expertise in the world and is going to get some real life experience, and that is the type of person that I believe students really learn best from. Somebody's in the field and able to do the job. Now, you can do that through an alternative plan within your school, yes. But there's some places where I live where there's not a lot of alternative offerings there in small rural New Hampshire. And if the State Board of Education were engaged in providing some of these alternative forms of education and giving credit through programs which the State Board, using the Department of Education, have seen and deemed as acceptable towards a degree, I think we ought to be using that. I think it's going to strengthen where we're going. Remember, our demographics are going down from 220,000 kids 10 years ago to 170,000 now. It's going to decrease further, and then based upon how we fund, and we talked about the funding, there's not going to be that much in the till for instruction and curriculum and through future years unless we get into a program delivery system. Our budget based upon programs. So I feel that we need to be looking at alternative ways to deliver this instruction and to receive credit. And this is where we're missing it right here. Unfortunately, this bill as it's been written now is around local school board doing all this. If anything, I think we ought to retain this bill and really address all the issues we've been discussing. We've been discussing this thing now for, well, I can't see the clock, so glare off it, but for a long time. And it indicates there are concerns. And we need to get in the bottom, down to the bottom line on it and say, why aren't you accepting these credits, school board, school district, school principal? Why aren't you? It's a accredited school. I don't think we have all the answers on that. Why aren't we accepting VLAX? Why can't we have the state board approving some programs out there which are learning opportunities, which a student that comes from an environment where they don't have money to pay for this stuff now is going to have a course offering that they can take, rather than it's always the affluent student that's able to do this stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. The position I'm going to take is that the issue of accepting credit from school districts is beyond the scope of this particular one. This particular bill is dealing with alternative, extended learning, and work-based programs. The points that have been made around whether or not local schools should accept them or not, that to me is a separate subject than this particular bill. Are there any further comments on this particular bill? Representative Lakers.
Follow up on what you just said. VLAX is one of the ones we're talking about, and VLAX does fall under this, doesn't it?
It could, but I think the comments, my sense is, the comments around acceptance, et cetera, of using Rick's position as far as the U.S. history example, that's a whole nother subject that I think would be subject to another piece of legislation.
Right, but part of what I've heard from students is that they took VLAX at one school and it wasn't accepted in another.
Some do, some don't.
Right, and that's part of that concern.
Other comments on 140?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is VLAX an extended learning opportunity?
It's not really. It's an academic program. I think it's been a charter public school. Yes.
No alternative.
It's an alternative program.
Other comments on 140? All right, we're going to proceed to vote on 140. But before we do, I'm going to have the last word. You'll note that in my chairmanship, I have not commented on bills before. It's not uncommon for the chairs of committees to speak their position before a vote on each bill. I have chosen not to do that. I'm making an exception in this particular bill. I want you to know why I'm going to support Dr. Pass. So please indulge me a bit on this, because I'm going to say some things that maybe I'm trying to keep them not too long. I consider myself an agent of change. For 45 years in my professional life, at the local, state, and national level, I have worked to change organizations. In that change process, I've been concerned about the sustainability of change. Some folks believe that change can take place by mandate. I believe in what Edwards Deming's shibboleth is around change. Those of you who don't know about Edwards Deming, Mr. Demings was the one who went over to Japan in the early 1950s and basically worked with the industrial complex of Japan and made the mantra of made in Japan being quality rather than cheap. He did that. And his mantra for change was, there can be no true organizational change without personal change. No true organizational change without personal change. The concept of personal change is a lengthy process. It doesn't happen overnight. Change is like a rheostat instead of a light switch. A light switch would mean you get a small group of people together, you come up with a new mission statement, a new vision statement, a new core value statement, and you make the announcement to the organization that this is where we're going from here on, with no engagement of those who have to do the work. That change gets placed upon the shelf of indecision, and no change takes place. Unlike what Demings believed in, and that is where you engage the employees, you engage the management, you engage those who are going to do the work in the change process. And as a result of that, the individuals within that institution they become the change they wish to be. Now, I give you that background because I have a complete opposite approach to change than the current Commissioner of Education. Commissioner of Education asked Representative Luno, myself, and Representative Heath to meet with him around Learn Everywhere. And we met with him. He gave his pitch. And at the end of the pitch, this is what I said to him. I'm not speaking out of school, this is something I shared with him. I told him that I think that he has a disrespect for the people who are currently in the education system. Schools in this state are ranked in the top 5 and are the envy across the country. People come to the state to figure out why we have what we have. And up until 2016, the Department of Education engaged the employees and those working in the system for change. So what were some of those changes? We've got internships, apprenticeships, we've got CTE programs, we got ELOs we've talked about, senior project, capstone project, PACE, STEM, robotics, computer programming, graphic design, competency-based education. All of those came about through the department engaging with those who are doing the work to provide the change. So how was Learn Everywhere created? It was created from SB 435, and let me read the salient point of the SB 435. It says, the State Board of Education shall adopt rules pursuant to RSA 541A relative to the approval of alternative programs granting credit leading to education, graduation. That's the standard. So in December of 2018, when the rules came out, and there was this plethora of programs that the commissioner was proposing, juxtaposed to what was already there dealing with the ELO program, I was stunned. I was taken back because that was not what this committee, I believe, looked at when they voted on that a year ago. Our sense was, well, yeah, there may be some out there that don't have an ELO, and they would create some kind of a program or some kind of a form that people could fill out and send to the department, but not the program that was created here. I said to the commissioner, I said, you and I have two different approaches to change. Mine is the engagement, the collaboration, the engagement of those who do the work to begin that rheostat of change. His approach, and he did not contrary me on this, his approach is to create an alternative program and then grab the existing system and pull it into that program. That is not sustainable change. Not this kind of sustainable change that we have experienced, at least since I came in this. So, my sense is, we asked the commissioner, we said, why aren't you taking your resources here and working with those school districts that don't have ELOs? Why aren't you going to do that rather than creating a whole other alternative system? No response. I believe in extended learning opportunities. My son had those extended learning opportunities. My grandson has those extended learning opportunities. But we already have that system in place in statute. We do not have to create another existing one as has been proposed here. Thank you very much. Obviously, I'm kind of concerned about this. We've looked at this. We've looked at this, and it's beside me. I don't understand why a new program has to be created, and the existing resources, limited as they are within the department, can't work through the ELO. Thank you very much. Let's move for a vote. Call the motion before the committee is to ought to pass on Senate Bill 140, an act relative to create alternative extended learning and work-based program. Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Luno.
Yes.
Representative Luno votes yes. Representative Shaw.
Yes.
Representative Shaw votes yes. Representative Cornell.
Yes.
Representative Cornell votes yes. Representative Doherty.
Yes.
Representative Doherty votes yes. Representative Lay.
Yes.
Representative Lay votes yes. Representative Tanner votes yes. Representative Ellison.
Yes.
Representative Ellison votes yes. Representative Mullen.
Yes.
Representative Mullen votes yes. Representative Reel.
Yes.
Representative Reel votes yes. Representative Malone.
Yes.
Representative Malone votes yes. Representative Woodcock.
Yes.
Representative Woodcock votes yes. Representative Ladd.
No.
Representative Ladd votes no. Representative Cordelli.
No.
Representative Cordelli votes no. Representative Elliott.
In spite of my chairman's eloquence, I vote no.
Representative Elliott votes no. Representative Bone.
No.
Representative Bone votes no. Representative Pancita.
No.
Representative Pancita votes no. Representative Allard.
No.
Representative Allard votes no. Representative Forsythe.
No.
Representative Forsythe votes no. Representative Lekis. Representative Lekis votes no. Representative Myler.
Yes.
Representative Myler votes yes. I have 12 to 8.
Minority report? Yes. We do. Thank you very much. Senator 140 is closed. Minority
I think, like she said, I think it should be both of them. With me.
Okay, we'll open up the exec session on Senate Bill 196, an act relative to non-academic surveys administered by a public school to its students. I'd like to call on Representative Malone for a motion.
Pass.
Arthur passes the motion. Representative Tanner seconds the motion. Representative Luno, do you have an amendment to this?
Yes, I do have an amendment to Senate Bill 196.
You move that?
And I'd like to move amendment number 18028 to pass.
This is the current one.
Seconded by Ellison.
You have the same one.
And there should be some additional copies. So, wait till
And, yeah, that one, that's the current one. And that one's me.
Does everybody have a copy now?
What
Right,
is
I
this?
guess
This is
not.
yours, it's amendment to 196. I have an amendment as well.
Deal with this one first and deal with you.
Okay.
Okay, Representative, does everybody have one? Representative Luno, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'd like to, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The amendment is not a, it's not a material amendment to the substance of the Senate Bill 196, but I think it helps to clarify what 196 has on lines 5 and 6, where it talks about notification. And rather than it being unclear as to whether or not email and text are required, because not every family or student provides the district with their email or cell phone number. the amendment on those same lines basically says the policy shall require school districts to notify parent, legal guardian of a non-academic survey, questionnaire, and its purpose by written notice given via the student. In addition to the written notice, the school district may provide notice electronically. And that's important because on lines 16 and 17, which is not part of the amendment, but part of the bill as it was, came to us from the Senate, the policy also shall also allow a parent or legal guardian to opt out of the non-academic survey questionnaire, either in writing or electronically. So it provides that means electronically, and it provides the Thank you.
Any questions or comments about amendment 1802H?
Just a
Yes, so Representative Moss.
point of clarification, Representative Luna. So when you say electronically, that would in fact cover text or email?
That's correct, and I chose to use the word electronically because it was used in the bill as it came
Yeah.
over in the Senate.
Okay, thank you.
All right, floor is open for discussion. Representative Cordell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding in this amendment, it still removes the opt-in provision. Is that correct?
Question?
It doesn't change the bill in a material way, so what it does is it does not change any of the section that removes the opt-in.
Other questions, other comments? Representative Shaw.
I'm opposed to SB 196, and I'll tell my reasons later, but I will vote for the amendment in case it does pass, because it does clarify lines 6 and 7 or 5 and 6, so that that clarification is necessary, although I'm opposed to the opt-in or opt-out part that's been taken out.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, I'm gonna have the clerk call the roll on this particular amendment. So we're gonna, if you are in support of amendment 1802H to SB 196, you will vote yes. If you are opposed, you will vote no. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Luno.
Yes.
Representative Luno votes yes. Representative Shaw?
Yes.
Representative Shaw votes yes. Representative Cornell?
Yes.
Representative Cornell votes yes. Representative Doherty?
Yes.
Representative Doherty votes yes. Representative Lay?
Yes.
Representative Lay votes yes. Representative Tanner votes yes. Representative Ellison?
Yes.
Representative Ellison votes yes. Representative Mullen?
Yes.
Representative Mullen votes yes. Representative Reel?
Yes.
Representative Reel votes yes. Representative Malone?
Yes.
Representative Malone votes yes. Representative Woodcock?
Yes.
Representative Woodcock votes yes. Representative Ladd?
No.
Representative Ladd votes no. Representative Cordelli?
No.
Representative Cordelli votes no. Representative Elliott?
No.
Representative Elliott votes no. Representative Bone?
No.
Representative Bone votes no. Did I say yes for this? Representative? Okay. Representative Panacita?
No.
Representative Panacita votes no. Representative Allard?
Yes.
Representative Allard votes yes. Representative Forsythe?
No.
Representative Forsythe votes no. Representative Lepkus?
Yes.
Representative Lepkus votes no. Representative
Oh, I
Myers?
voted yes.
Yes. You
I voted yes.
I'm sorry. Representative Lepkus votes yes. Representative Myler?
Yes.
Representative Myler votes yes. I have 14 to 6.
14 and 6.
The motion carries. So we now have Senate Bill 196 as amended on the floor. Representative Lakers has an amendment. Would you like to pass it out?
And unfortunately, I took the text that they had where it had said,
Wait, Representative, hang on just a second until we all get a copy. Okay?
yeah. Well, I was just gonna say that I like to be nosy electronically better than email and text. Like, I would have liked to have thought of that.
I gotcha.
I used the email or text because that's what they had on the thing, but I like the electronically better. 125.
Somebody's got a lot of them.
No, I think we passed them all out, so there's nothing.
Did they, so they
Decided
didn't,
that we don't have,
so they didn't give me enough then?
No, we can give you the,
Well, here, somebody can,
I'll share.
yeah, okay. You wanna see yours, or we can all come? Here.
okay, Representative Lakers, would you please move your amendment, please?
Okay, I would move amendment to SB 196, number 1832H, up to pass.
Second? Second. Representative Forsythe, thank you. You can speak to your amendment, please?
Okay, so this puts the opt-in back in because, for two reasons. One, I remember years ago, before when it was opt-out, I heard from parents all over the place complaining about their kids taking surveys that they didn't know anything about because communication wasn't happening. Once they went to opt-in, parents stopped complaining, but the research people started complaining. Now that we proposed opt-out again, I have gotten more email on this from parents than I did on the gun bills. It has been a continuous supply, and there has not been one who asked me to support this bill. Everybody asked to oppose it. So I'm trying to satisfy both by, number one, allowing parents final choice, but number two, I have added in 3 different places that parents can be notified, not just of the fact that there will be a survey, but actually a copy of the survey, so it's not just posted at the school or on the school district website, but that the parents will actually receive the survey. And the parents can respond electronically. So if it's a survey they approve, I mean, they're gonna get it. If it's a survey they approve of, it's real easy for them to opt in. If it's a survey they don't approve of, students shouldn't be taking it, regardless of whether it messes up somebody's study, because if the parents don't want it, they don't want it. You know, they have ultimate control of their kids. And so this is trying to find that balance between the parents still have control of optimum, you know, and control of their kids and what they do, but trying to make it easier so that the research people will get more results. So that's, trying to make a compromise between the two.
Thank you. Representative Forsythe, do you have any comments on your second?
No, but I do like the
Opt-in.
Sorry, opt-in.
Very good. So amendment 1832H is now on the floor for discussion. Comments? Representative Woodcock.
and Mr. Chairman, this is a comment that I should have asked before, but it's an error, I think, for me. On both of these amendments, the initial amendment that was approved and the amendments on the floor, my assumption is, I want to be correct here, that neither one of them mentioned the effective date. So the effective date, which was in the original bill, I assume maintains itself.
That's correct.
It didn't, you know, okay. Thank you, that's all I wanted. Thank you,
very
sir.
much. Other comments?
60 days. 60 days.
I've not seen any other comments, so on this, I'm going to also have a roll call vote, please. So the motion before us is to adopt House Bill 196 with amendment, excuse me, just the amendment 1832H. If you are in favor of adopting 1832H, you'll vote yes. If you're opposed, you'll vote no. Please call for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Muno.
No.
Representative Muno votes no. Representative Shaw.
No.
Representative Shaw votes no. Representative Cornell.
No.
Representative Cornell votes no. Representative Doherty.
No.
Representative Doherty votes no. Representative Lay.
No.
Representative Lay votes no. Representative Tanner votes no. Representative Ellison?
No.
Representative Ellison votes no. Representative Mullen?
No.
Representative Mullen votes no. Representative Reel?
No.
Representative Reel votes no. Representative Malone?
No.
Representative Malone votes no. Representative Woodcock?
No.
Representative Woodcock votes no. Representative Ladd?
Yes.
Representative Ladd votes yes. Representative Cordelli?
Yes.
Representative Cordelli votes yes. Representative Elliott?
Yes.
Representative Elliott votes yes. Representative Bone?
Yes.
Representative Bone votes yes. Representative Pam
Yes.
Cito? Votes yes. Representative Allard?
Yes.
Representative Allard votes yes. Representative Forsythe?
Yes.
Representative Forsythe votes yes. Representative Lekis?
Yes.
Representative Lekis votes yes. Representative Myler?
No.
Representative Myler votes no. I have 12 to 8.
Voted,
8 to 12.
eight yes,
Eight,
12 no, the motion fails. So before the committee right now is SB 196 as amended by 1802H. Further conversation, further discussion on the Octopass motion as amended. Representative Gordon.
Try to be brief on this. As a principal, starting the school year off with getting parents' signatures on the use of information, allowing their children's pictures to be in the yearbook. We spent days, if not weeks, chasing down, trying to get signatures. Did this for years. Same situation. So basically, we had an opt-in situation. It was a nightmare to actually hold it. Prevented things like kids getting their pictures taken. We had a lot of pictures taken, and again, because of privacy concerns, kids weren't putting pictures. So finally, the school board changed the rules and went to an opt-out system. And basically, they opted out. So if they had objections, then they had to notify the school. That was discussed, that was shared, we talked about it at PTO meetings. There was no big uproar over privacy concerns. We made the shift, and life went on. Opting out enables more participation. So I'm just going to make the argument saying that we've done opting out in schools for years now, and it has not, I think there's always the same people who are concerned about privacy. Before we did opting out, they had concerns, and we heard about that. And so I'm thinking that we're going to still hear about it again. But again, what happens is schools now are unable to fund it because they're not getting the responses on vital surveys that are really required for funding. And that really is putting a real big drag on education.
Thank you, Representative Cordell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several points if I might. Federally funded surveys require an opt-in. Non-academic surveys, that is. I am much more concerned with parents and their raising of their children and their rights rather than the money that researchers get or don't get for conducting surveys. Thirdly, we've talked about some of the surveys. This is a survey that was given out a few years ago to 7th and 8th graders. 7th and 8th graders. Questions like, which of the following best describes your family? I live with my 2 birth biological parents. I live with my 2 adoptive parents, etc. I'm adopted. I might not even know when I'm taking this survey whether I'm adopted or not. But you're asking personal information of that child, a 7th and 8th grader, without the parent's knowledge. I object to that. Other questions on this. Where does your family live now? On a farm, in a small town, etc.? What is the highest level of schooling of your father? What is the highest level of schooling of your mother? Why do we need to find out that information? I object. These non-academic surveys should be opt-in.
Thank you. Other comments? Representative Shaw.
Yes, just briefly, I worked on the committee in 2017 that made the changes that were put into present law. The only reason I didn't support your amendment, Representative Lakis, was because it put too much of a burden on the school as far as the emailing the the whole test out to parents, or whatever. If they can, if it's at the school, they will be able to see it. To respond to the question about getting the opt-in things back, if you which many of the schools have done now since this law was passed, you pass out a notice to the parents at the beginning of the year that whenever we have any type of surveys in the school, children will have to opt in to taking the surveys, and we need your cooperation to get these surveys back. Yeah, that sounds pie in the sky, but it works if you get people conditioned to doing it that way. I just want to say that, and then we put in this section, we put in the fact that the behavioral survey developed by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which was, as we found from testimony, was probably the most accurate, the one that would do the most good for the schools, the one that was most professional, etc., that we would not require an opt-in from that one, but still had the opt-out. But everything else, there were surveys, like what Representative Cordelli just stated. We had some that were worse than that. I showed them to my grandson that was a junior in high school at the time, and he said, I don't even know how to answer that. And he's not a nerd or anything. He just said, I wouldn't know how to answer that. And there was even one that if you answered so many questions a certain way, you were a Republican. And if you answered questions so many, you were a Democrat. Some of these are absolutely ridiculous. And parents should be aware of every single one that comes into the school, whether it is for a class, whether it's individual teacher, or whether it's for a school. They should be aware of it before that policy goes out. And I think the law is clear and it should stay the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments? Representative Bowman.
Thank you. I know Representative Still was on that committee, but that was the committee on the bill that I first started. So it's been going around in a circle. The problem is, there's no such thing, and it's been proven over all the time, there's no such thing as an anonymous survey. UNH put out one some few years ago that was it's very easy to find out who the student was. And based on even what Representative Cordelli had with those questions. I mean, it's easy for a school, especially small school, to say, oh, that's Mary, that's Bob. I mean, and even the CDC test. I mean, those you can go through and find out. I mean, no such thing as an anonymous survey. And some of these questions are downright inappropriate. So bad that if, for example, a teacher asked a student a particular question that was on the test, this teacher could be arrested. But there are questions on the test. For example, for even 5th, 6th graders, are you sexually active? At what age did you start? Now you're asking kids that age, they say, oh, maybe I should be. Those are inappropriate questions. And on the CDC one, I don't even think they should even bother with that, because I don't know of any school where kids take that test seriously. Because I remember when we did it in my school, I was on the school board, and I was with my granddaughter being in school, I knew a lot of the kids, and they told me what was going on with that test. It was a joke. And when the principal came in to give these astounding results, I said to him, you know, the kids didn't take this seriously. They knew how to answer these questions before. They all were taking drugs. They all beat their girlfriends. They all did this. They all drank every weekend. So we had a representative, two student representatives on our school board, and they agreed with me. So that, you know, so even that test is ridiculous. Because even we see kids on Facebook saying, hey, let's answer this question this way, because they know it beforehand. So all these surveys, I mean, it's personal rights, and the parental rights. The parent should know what's going on in their school and what questions are being asked of their kids. So, and they need to be an opt-in.
Thank you. Mr. Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's all about opt-in, opt-out. And as the school principal for all those years and as a fourth grade teacher initially, I can tell you that you will get things back if you send them out and let the kids know they will come back. You have an elementary teacher in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade say, we're going on a field trip this weekend. But in order for you to go, kiddo, you have to have your form back in. How many do you get back? You get them all back. You get them all back. The one that forgot, you just make a phone call and the parent brings it in. Now, in regard to this particular type of issue right here, you're not getting some of them back because the parent just doesn't want to do it. They don't want their child to participate in those survey questions. I've looked at the 90 questions there that it's been talked about around the table here, and I can recall seeing some of those that are offered in the bank of questions, which fortunately our Department of Education does somewhat monitor that and stop, but there's a lot of questions in there I do not want my grandchildren or my children having to answer. In fact, I can tell you my older grandchild, who's now a high school student, they Christmas tree it. They just go dunk, 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 because they know, that it's not going to impact their grades at all. And there is some data that when we looked at this on the task force years ago, when Barb Shaw and Ralph Bohm, and we did it downstairs in one of the Senate rooms, I can recall providing that information that even on the federal level, the difference between opt-in and opt-out is not this grand 50%. It's more like in the single digits of return that you miss. And it doesn't impact those scores. Basically, what you have to do is that it comes back if the teacher or the person's handing out follows up and tries to get that back. But have you ever given tests like the NAEP, National Assessment of Education Progress? I've given those. In the first sheet it says, you do not have to complete this test. And I've administered that throughout the state of Vermont. And I can remember several kids saying and crying, I don't want to take this. The teacher said, you will take this test. And I said, no, you will not, because you're not required to take this. What do you want to do, Johnny? And Johnny said, I don't want to take this test. And they were emotionally strung out. They weren't going to give us any valid results from that thing. So I think that opt-out versus opt-in is the question here. But I think that even with an opt-in, you can get forms back if you're diligent in what you're doing in the school and requiring them to come back. We get all our field trip requests back.
Representative Lakers.
As you know, I oppose opt-out, and I want opt-in. I do have another amendment if you would prefer, but it probably isn't going to work, and it just has the top part. It has what Barbara asked for. At any rate, I have it if you want it. But it's here. But if everybody's just going to vote out anyways, no point in looking at it.
Other questions or other proposals? Seeing none, we'll prepare to vote. The motion from the situation is as follows. We're about to vote on opt-to-pass as amended by Amendment 1802H on Senate Bill 196 relative to the non-academic surveys administered by public school students. I will call the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Muno.
Yes.
Representative Muno votes yes. Representative Shaw.
No.
Representative Shaw votes no. Representative Cornell.
Yes.
Representative Cornell votes yes. Representative Doherty.
Yes.
Representative Doherty votes yes. Representative Lay.
Yes.
Representative Lay votes yes. Representative Tanner votes yes. Representative Ellison.
Yes.
Representative Ellison votes yes. Representative Mullen.
Yes.
Representative Mullen votes yes. Representative Reel.
Yes.
Representative Reel votes yes. Representative Vallone.
Yes.
Representative Vallone votes yes. Representative Woodcock.
Yes.
Representative Woodcock votes yes. Representative Ladd.
No.
Representative Ladd votes no. Representative Cordelli.
No.
Representative Cordelli votes no. Representative Elliott.
No.
Representative Elliott votes no. Representative Bone.
No.
Representative Bone votes no. Representative Panacito.
No.
Representative Panacito votes no. Representative Allard.
No.
Representative Allard votes no. Representative Forsythe.
No.
Representative Forsythe votes no. Representative Lutkus.
No.
Representative Lutkus votes no. Representative Myler.
Yes.
Representative Myler votes yes. I have 11 to 9. The OTPA passes.
Passes, looking very good. Minority report? Well, who, I need to know who's going to do it.
We'll talk about it after, yeah.
Okay, so Moulton.
We'll cross out one name.
Okay.
It's got a written name.
Thank you. Close the exec session on 196. Before we move forward, what I'd like to do, and listen very carefully what I'm about to say, I would like the committee to basically stand in place for a minute. And we'll go right back to it. Do not leave your area.